Blake's voice cut through the house like a blade. Sign or get out. He stood at the head of my dining table with the manila folder tucked under his arm as if it were a weapon. Wedgwood china, my grandmother's, glowed under dimmed lights beside takeout cartons that smelt like soy sauce and synthetic orange. He'd staged ambiance. He'd even lit candles, the kind of details he saved for performances. I didn't answer. I watched him. He wore the navy suit I'd bought for a job interview he never attended. The cologne was mine, the confidence wasn't. It trembled at the edges if you looked closely, around his eyes, in the fingers tapping the folder spine. Cassadity, he said, arranging his face into concern. We've grown apart. I've done the emotional labor, the household management. I sacrificed my career. You never had one, I said, calm, even. A muscle jumped in his jaw. I'm trying to be civil. Try harder. He slid the folder across the table, nudging aside a porcelain bowl he'd filled with cheap beef and broccoli. I had papers drawn up. It's fair, for both of us. I opened it. Legal boilerplate, clumsily prepurposed. He wanted my house, the house I bought 2 years before we met. He wanted alimony for the career he paused in the womb. He wanted his share of Cassidy Blackwood Consulting, the business I built while he played entrepreneur in our living room, headphones on, shoulders hunched over a controller. You're asking for half my company? I said. I've been your sounding board for every decision, networking, support, sacrifice. Spending, I said. You forgot spending. He kept going, louder, filling the room with the words his attorney must have fed him. Partnership, contribution, equity. I let him talk. I studied him the way I study acquisition targets. What's real, what's posture, where the leverage lives. Sign, Blake said, at last, or pack your things. Sign or get out, I repeated, as if testing a strange new sentence in my mouth. He mistook my quiet for resistance he could bulldoze. He planted a hand on the table so hard the china rattled. I've established residency. I've contributed to maintenance. The house is ours. The house is held by CBW Holdings Trust, established 2 years before we met. You signed acknowledgments when we refinanced the security system. He blinked. There it was, the flinch before the lie. My attorney says, your attorney advertises on bus benches. He's been suspended twice. His cheeks went a dark, uneven red. You think you can talk down to me because you make money? I think I can read a deed. Silence. Behind him, a candle guttered and spit wax on my tablecloth. He watched me the way gamblers watch a roulette wheel. The pen he'd provided sat waiting beside the signature lines. A blue Bic, nothing weighty enough for what he wanted. I picked it up. He exhaled. Shoulders relaxed. A laugh caught in his throat and dissolved into a tremor of relief. Good, he said, softly, as if we'd reached a reasonable compromise. Good. I signed. Page after page. My name steady, clean, unhurried. He leaned forward, hungry for each stroke, believing ink could give him title to things he'd only ever borrowed. My roof, my office, my life. When I finished, I placed the pen down, then my keys, then my wedding ring, the platinum band I bought myself after he said rings were outdated symbols of ownership. I met his eyes. Congratulations. Enjoy your dinner. I walked to the door. He couldn't help himself. That's it? You're just leaving? I didn't answer. I closed the door behind me, felt the night hit my face cold and precise, and kept walking. 12 hours earlier, he had broken into a different room. At 7 a.m., I found him in my home office, fully dressed, briefcase at his feet, my financial life splayed across my desk like evidence. He had moved my awards aside to make space for his legal pad. He was playing attorney, behind my desk, in my chair. "I've done some calculations," he said, tapping a pencil on paper filled with uncertain cursive and arrogant numbers. "We need to discuss who really owns what." "You went through my filing cabinet." "Our filing cabinet," he corrected.
I looked at the piles he'd made. Mortgage statements with only my name, property tax bills paid from the CBW account, the deed, dated 2 years before our first date. He'd even listed my grandmother's jewelry under marital assets at the top of the page. Every letter looped like a child had drawn it. "Marriage is 50-50, he said, chin lifted. "Unless you don't contribute," I said. I maintained our home. I thought of the roof I hired contractors to repair, the landscapers I paid because he believed yard work meant Venmoing neighborhood kids who never showed up, the cleaning service he called bourgeois and still left muddy sneakers for twice a week. "Is that what you told your lawyer?" I asked, "while he was drafting your fantasy?" Blake stood, smoothed the lapels of a suit I bought him, and found a performance posture in my window light. "You're belittling me, Cass. I supported you." He'd supported the couch. He'd supported the gym. He'd supported a revolving cast of business partners whose meetings always ended in bars with muted sports and unitemized tabs. I lifted the deed until the watermark glowed. "This house is mine." He swallowed. "We're married." "The trust predates our marriage." The mask slipped. He grabbed bank statements and shook them as if numbers could fall out. "You transferred money into our joint account. For groceries, utilities, personal spending," I said. "Separate from the mortgage and taxes. You know that." He'd had Rachel's email explaining it in his inbox for months. He never read emails he couldn't screenshot to boast about. He stared at me, angry, cornered, young in a way that didn't match his age. Sometimes I remembered the charming man from a conference 4 years ago, the one who spoke in promise and fever. I couldn't find him in this posture. "This isn't over," he said, fumbling with the combination locks on a new briefcase that still smelled like department store leather. "Thomas Garrett is one of the best divorce attorneys in the state." "On Facebook," I said, right under a keto gummy ad. He flinched again, just enough. "Get out of my chair," I said. He didn't. So I went to work. At 12:30 p.m., he called, voice buoyant, paper rustling behind him. "I'm planning something special tonight," he said. "We need to talk about our future." "Should I pick up wine?" I asked. "No, I've got everything handled." He never had anything handled. By 2 p.m., Rachel Thornton had my files open and her voice set to surgical. "You're bulletproof," she said. "Trust established pre-marriage, title clear, payments clean, no commingling. Let him play his hand. Record everything." She added, "Missouri is one-party consent. Put your phone in your pocket." By 3:15 p.m., my mother called from Florida, tight with fury. "He asked me about the Vermont cabin, then about your grandmother's jewelry. I told him my memory isn't what it used to be." A beat. "It is." At 5:47 p.m., my neighbor, Jennifer, texted. Blake had ordered a case of cheap beer to my door and bragged at the porch about taking back his house. She sent a shaky video, Blake lifting a bottle to the camera, hashtagging a victory he hadn't earned. At 6:10 p.m., the smart lock blinked green for my code. The house smelled like the highway restaurant we swore we'd never revisit. Candles burned low. China glowed blue-white like a snowfield. "Sit," he said. He stood between me and the door. I sat where he wanted. Then I watched. This is what he never understood. Business isn't bluster, it's inventory of facts, of tells, of time. He started his speech. Therapy, imbalance, sacrifice. His hands rested on the chair back at practiced angles. He'd worked on the cadence, he'd tried it in the mirror, he'd picked an outfit for the closing scene. He slid the folder. I read his demands. I let the silence grow. "Are you going a sign?" he asked. Smugness made his voice a half step higher. "No," I said. It detonated him. "You have to sign. This is what's happening." I stood slowly. "Your decision about my house, my business, my life." He slammed his palm down. "Sign or get out." The room held its breath, just for me. I pictured my office in the morning light, the dust motes, the moved awards, the imitation briefcase. I pictured Rachel's cool eyes over a stack of tabbed folders. I pictured the deed, the trust, the ledger of 4 years. Then I signed. My signatures were perfect. I left my keys and my ring. I left him candles snuffed by his own hand. I left him with papers that would flay him alive the moment a competent lawyer read them. I walked into the night and didn't look back. By 8:15 p.m., I was under bright, honest lights in Rachel Thornton's conference room. Coffee and porcelain. Documents in order. My phone on the table, its recorder still humming like a low, satisfied engine. "Did he say it?" Rachel asked, eyes on her screen. "Word for word," I said. "Sign or get out." "Good," she said, already assembling the exhibit list. "Tomorrow morning, we start." She opened Blake's Instagram on her laptop. He'd posted a boomerang of a beer bottle clinking against my living room window. Caption, "New chapters starts now." He'd tagged the location. He always tagged the location.
Rachel took screenshots. He never could resist an audience, she said. I took a breath that didn't taste like someone else's script and nodded. Neither could his attorney. Rachel's smile was thin and lethal. Wait until he hears what he just let you do. The soy sauce smell lingered in my hair long after I left. Cheap takeout grease seeping into my coat, sticking to my skin. By the time I checked into the Marriott, I wanted to scrub him off me. The candles, the folder, the ultimatum, it clung like smoke. Rachel was right. Blake had overplayed. But I couldn't shake the sound of his hand slamming my grandmother's china as if he owned the table. Sign or get out. It echoed even in the clean, quiet lines of the hotel suite. I placed my purse on the desk and laid out the papers I'd signed for him. The ridiculous demands, the amateur legal jargon. A monument to delusion. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I pulled out my phone. The recording was clear. His threats, his claims, his mistakes. I labeled the file Exhibit A. Midnight messages. At 11:47 p.m., a text from Jennifer lit my phone. He's throwing a party. 10, maybe 12 people. Beer bottles on the porch. He keeps saying you abandoned him. She sent a video. Blake stood in my doorway, one arm around his brother, shouting to the street. She chose spreadsheets over family. 4 years, and she walked out. His words carried. My street was quiet, the kind where neighbors heard everything. He wanted witnesses. He wanted sympathy. Rachel had predicted this too. Men like Blake can't stand the silence. They perform. They broadcast. Their ego becomes evidence. She hadn't been wrong yet. The financial switch. At 12:30 a.m., Marcus Chen called. My CFO never wasted words. "It's done," he said. "All accounts restructured. Wilson's access terminated at 8:47 p.m. How much was he spending? 17 auto payments flagged. BMW lease, gym, country club, some executive coaching scam. $400 a month for a life coach who taught him how to stand up straight. Marcus exhaled, the closest he came to a laugh. I pictured him, beer raised, card refused, face tightening in the way men do when reality interrupts their fantasy. I said document everything. It's already in the audit trail. By 1 a.m., my joint account notifications rolled in, decline after decline. Gas stations, liquor stores, pizza delivery. Each rejection another small collapse. I imagine him scrolling his banking app with drunken fingers, staring at the zero balance, wondering how his empire had evaporated overnight. Emma's confession. At dawn, my phone buzzed with a message from Emma, my junior associate. Can we meet before the office opens? Something I should have told you months ago. We met in a coffee shop 3 blocks from headquarters. She looked wrecked, shredding napkins into confetti. 3 months ago, she whispered, at the Patterson conference, you were on stage. I saw Blake at the Marriott. With who? I asked. With a woman, early 20s, blonde, fit. Her voice cracked. I thought maybe it was business, but last week, she slid her phone across the table. Instagram. Jessica Reeves, fitness influencer. In one photo, she wore my diamond tennis bracelets. In another, my Cartier watch, the one lost last summer. And in a gym selfie, my grandmother's pearl necklace. #blessed. Living life. New energy. I stared into the edges of the photos blurred. I told him the bracelet was at the jeweler, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. Emma's eyes filled with guilt. I should have said something sooner. I said, you just did. The accountant's trail. Rachel called as I drove back to the hotel. My forensic accountant found something. Blake opened the separate account at First National 4 months ago. $37,000 deposited in small increments, structured to avoid reports. Where from? Your assets. Jewelry, silverware, first editions from your father's collection. My grip tightened on the wheel. My father's books? All missing. All liquidated. Rachel's tone sharpened. He's been building an escape fund with your inheritance. I didn't answer. My throat closed around words too jagged to speak. The neighbor's tapes. Back at the hotel, Mrs. Chin called. 73 years old, sharper than Blake ever dreamed of being. I need to show you something. Her grandson had installed doorbell cameras last year. She pulled up footage on her laptop. Date stamp. 2 weeks ago. Blake's BMW in my driveway. He opened the passenger door. Jessica stepped out, laughing, his hand pressed to his lower back.
Another clip. Jessica arriving alone with her own key. My key. She stayed 3 hours. And another, both of them carrying boxes to his trunk. My boxes. Mrs. Chin folded her arms. I should have said something sooner, but it wasn't my place. It is now, I said. The collapse. By morning, the avalanche had begun. 8:47 a.m. Blake's BMW repossessed from my driveway. 9:15 a.m. His smart home app access terminated. No coffee, no lights, no blinds. 9:42 a.m. Jessica posted brunch with a new man, Rolex visible, champagne pouring. Caption, when the universe removes toxic people. #trading up. She'd already moved on. And Blake? Jennifer's photo arrived. Blake barefoot in the driveway, repossession notice in hand, shouting at neighbors who pretended to water lawns. His empire shrinking with every call, every bill, every cancellation. Garrett's panic. At 10:03 a.m., Rachel's phone lit with Garrett's number. She put him on speaker. Ms. Thornton, we need clarification, Garrett stammered. The CBW Holdings Trust? My client thought... Your client signed documents acknowledging the trust 7 times. Paper shuffled, voices hissed in the background. Then Blake's voice, loud, frantic. Tom, my car's gone. My cards don't work. I can't even make coffee in my own house. Garrett's tone turned cold. It's not your house, Mr. Wilson. It never was. I smiled for the first time in days. You have no idea what you just let her do, Garrett barked. You signed away everything. The silence on the line was pure, uncut panic. The eviction. Rachel muted the call and looked at me. Her eyes gleamed. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., Deputy Martinez will serve him his eviction. I leaned back in my chair, coffee warm in my hands, the city bright beyond the window. For the first time, Blake wasn't my husband. He wasn't my opponent. He was just a man with no house, no car, no money, trapped in the wreckage of his own performance. And I had only just begun. The knock at dawn. At exactly 7 a.m., Jennifer texted me a video. Deputy Martinez stood in my driveway, crisp uniform pressed, eviction notice in hand. The camera caught Blake opening the door in yesterday's suit pants and no shirt, hair matted, eyes swollen. Martinez handed him the papers. Blake's mouth moved, but no sound carried. Then he slammed the door like a teenager. 2 minutes later, another video came through. Blake stormed onto the porch, waving the notice, screaming at the quiet street. She set me up! She tricked me! Mrs. Chen watched from her porch with her teacup steady as a gavel. The neighborhood finally saw him without the filter of his boasts. Just a man, unshaven, broken, stripped. The call from a landline. At 9:20 a.m., my hotel phone rang. Unknown number. Cassandra, Blake's voice, raw, unsteady. We need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. I said nothing. Maybe we try counseling. Work it out ourselves. Remember the beginning? The beginning, I said evenly, was a sales pitch. He tried again. You set me up. You knew all along. This marriage was a business arrangement. The marriage was real. Your contribution was not. His breath quickened. When am I supposed to go? I have nothing. You have 72 hours. Daniel will bring the truck. I hung up. The packing parade. That afternoon, I watched Mrs. Chin's feed. Daniel pulled a U-Haul into my driveway. Blake stomped around, tossing his life into boxes. His gaming chair, sweat-stained and broken at the wheels. A treadmill I bought, disguised as his fitness investment. Vision boards scrawled with words like millionaire and empire in neon markers. Jennifer texted, They're arguing over the Peloton. Daniel showed him your credit card receipt. Blake nearly cried. Neighbors gathered discreetly. Mr. Patterson walked his beagle 3 times, slower with each pass. The show was free and no one wanted to miss it. By 4 p.m., the truck was laughably empty. His entire empire reduced to a pile smaller than my walk-in closet. The numbers don't lie. Rachel called as the truck pulled away. Forensic accounting's complete. Do you want the total? Yes. Over 4 years, Blake contributed 0. He spent $342,768 of your money. She read the breakdown. $83,000 on restaurants and networking, $47,000 on gyms, trainers, supplements, $31,000 on online courses he never finished, $45,000 on travel junkets disguised as conferences. The rest? Jessica. Hotels, jewelry, cash. I closed my eyes. I thought of what that money could have done. Scholarships, shelters, actual businesses. Instead, it had purchased his fantasy. Rachel's voice was sharp. This report makes him not just useless, it makes him a dependent.
Reclaiming the house. At 6 p.m., the locksmith arrived. Robert, quiet and efficient, replaced every lock, reset every code. He handed me new keys. Only your biometrics now. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place was the cleanest sound I'd ever heard. I moved through the house, pulling open curtains Blake had kept closed. Sunlight poured in like fresh air through wounds. The garden glowed with roses from my grandmother's house, flowers he never watered, never noticed. The cleaning crew came the next morning. Patricia, the lead, understood instantly. "Divorce cleaning," she said softly. She sanitized the bathroom, steam cleaned the carpets, scoured the bedroom until it smelt like nothing. No cologne, no sweat, no Blake. Piece by piece, I restored what was mine. My father's desk, my grandmother's china, my books. The library replaced his garage gym. Leather-bound volumes where dumbbells once clanged. Silence instead of protein shake blenders. The house exhaled. For the first time in years, so did I. Social media ashes. Meanwhile, Blake was burning his own reputation online. Instagram showed Jessica wearing my grandmother's emerald ring, captioned #upgrade. Then, 3 days later, she blocked him publicly, posting, "Learn to spot red flags early. Coffee money is the first test." Screenshots circulated. Blake's brag posts became group chat jokes. LinkedIn showed his profile deactivated after his fresh start post was ridiculed in private business circles. Even his gym revoked his membership. Jennifer overheard him begging at the desk. They told him the account was delinquent. 6 months later. By September, my house was whole. My library finished, my dining room alive again. Rachel and her wife came with wine. Emma brought lasagna. Mrs. Chin delivered dumplings. We ate on my grandmother's china, the plates Blake once slammed his palm against. Laughter filled the space he'd drained for years. Rachel raised her glass, to Cassidy, proof that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's protection. Let them destroy themselves. Glasses clinked and the house hummed with light, warmth, voices that belonged. Blake had wanted to steal everything with paper weapons and bus bench lawyers. Instead, he lost it all in front of the very audience he craved. And I hadn't lifted a hand, except to sign my name. Blake called again 2 weeks later, this time from a prepaid burner phone. His voice carried the edge of desperation and alcohol. "You ruined me, Cass. I have nothing. No car, no cards, no house." "You never had them," I said. "You can't just erase me. People know me. I have friends. I have connections." "Check your Instagram," I replied. "They've already erased you." He fell silent. I could hear a television in the background, muffled voices, the hum of someone else's apartment. Then, a soft, broken question. "Where am I supposed to go?" That's not my problem anymore. The accountant's bombshell. Rachel's office smelt of lemon oil and sharp paper. Her paralegal dropped another file on the desk, thicker than before. "Blake's site account?" Rachel asked. I nodded. The forensic accountant had traced the deposits, jewelry sales to pawn shops, antique dealers with invoices for my father's books, even eBay listings for my grandmother's silver. 37,000 he tried to hide, but every transaction is documented. He stole from you, liquidated it, and pretended it was his nest egg. "Will it hold in court?" I asked. Rachel smiled like a blade. "It will bury him." Jessica's betrayal. That night, Jessica posted another story, not with Blake, with a man in a tailored suit, his wrist flashing a Rolex, champagne, rooftop skyline, caption, "When you trade boys for men, #new energy." She wore my grandmother's pearl necklace. Again. Blake wasn't tagged. He wasn't even mentioned. His replacement was. Within hours, Jessica blocked him, deleted every photo. Her feed became a curated museum of someone else's life. My jewelry, her smile, another man's arm. For Blake, it was not just a betrayal, it was annihilation. The neighborhood chorus. Jennifer Martinez called. You should know Blake's been knocking on doors, telling people you left him for your career, that he sacrificed everything for you. What do they say? They laugh, she said simply. Nobody believes him. They saw the U-Haul, they saw the deputy, they saw Jessica. Even Mrs. Chin chimed in during her book club, calling him that loud boy with no job. Word spread faster than his lies. The narrative was no longer his, it was mine.
The fall of Garrett. Thomas Garrett, his attorney, couldn't contain the fallout. Word of his bungled case leaked through legal circles. Other lawyers mocked the Wilson file, a case study in incompetence. Garrett's reputation was shaky, Rachel told me, but now he's radioactive. You should have seen the smirk on Judge Harris's face when I mentioned his name. Blake had picked the one man in the state who could sink faster than him. The empty man. I saw him once, weeks later, downtown, outside Velocity Sports Bar, same place his card had been declined that first night. He stood on the curb, shoulders hunched, a plastic grocery bag dangling from one hand. No BMW, no suit, no entourage. Just a man stripped of props. He spotted me across the street. His face flickered between rage and longing, like he didn't know which mask to wear. Then he turned away. For the first time, he looked small. Reclaiming the space. My house became mine in every sense. The barrage gym transformed into a library, sunlight warming spines of books Blake once mocked. My grandmother's desk returned to the living room. Curtains stayed open. Air moved freely. I commissioned a mural in the garden, a rose blooming through broken glass. My grandmother's roses framed it. Neighbors stopped to admire, some taking photos. The house no longer whispered his name. It sang mine. The dinner party. 6 months after Blake's eviction, I hosted dinner. Rachel and her wife brought a Bordeaux. Emma and her husband brought lasagna. Mrs. Chin arrived with dumplings. We sat at the table Blake once slammed his palm against. Candles burned clean, china gleamed, laughter filled corners that had only known his sulking silence. Rachel raised her glass. To Cassidy, proof that when someone tries to steal your life, the best revenge is letting them choke on their own lies. Glasses clinked. Light refracted off crystal. The house was whole again. Blake's ashes. Meanwhile, Blake's digital footprints turned into ashes. His Instagram abandoned after Jessica blocked him. His LinkedIn empty. Profile deleted. His gym revoked membership. His country club card cut. He'd tried to file appeals. Garrett bungled each one. Judges dismissed them with disdain. Rumor had it Blake crashed on his brother's couch, then a friend's floor, then nowhere anyone could name. The man who once stood in my office chair arranging my papers like trophies now had no desk, no chair, no stage. And I didn't need to destroy him. He did it himself. Blake's final move arrived in a thin envelope, hand-delivered by a process server. A lawsuit. He was suing me for unjust enrichment. Rachel flipped through it with a smile that could cut marble. This reads like he copied it from a Reddit thread. The claims were pathetic. Emotional labor, household maintenance, moral support. He wanted compensation for 4 years of breathing my air. Rachel shut the folder. We'll crush this in a hearing. It won't survive 5 minutes. Still, I showed up in court. I wanted to watch him try. Courtroom collapse. Blake entered in an ill-fitting suit, bloodshot eyes, clutching papers with shaking hands. Garrett wasn't at his side. He dropped Blake weeks earlier, citing irreconcilable differences. Translation, even Garrett knew a sinking ship when he saw one. He tried to speak about sacrifices, about love, about how he had built this marriage. His voice cracked. The judge cut him off. Mr. Wilson, The trust documents are clear. The financial records are exhaustive. You contributed nothing. Case dismissed. The gavel fell. The sound echoed like a coffin lid. Blake sagged. His papers slipped from his fingers, scattering across the floor. No one helped him pick them up. The auction. 2 weeks later, Rachel called. Pawn shops liquidating inventory. Thought you'd want to know. I drove downtown. Glass cases lined with jewelry that should never have left my house. My grandmother's emerald ring, my father's signed Hemingway, my Cartier watch. I bought them back. Every piece. The clerk didn't ask questions. He just rang it up. Cash only. When I slipped the emerald ring back on my finger, I whispered, "Welcome home." Rumors of Blake. News traveled in fragments. His BMW auctioned by the bank. Jessica flaunting a new fiancé, a tech executive in Bali. Blake spotted at a dive bar, begging old gym buddies for drinks. A rumor he was working under the table, unloading trucks at night. He'd become a ghost story in the places he once bragged, a cautionary tale whispered between beers. The resurrection of Cassidy. Meanwhile, my world expanded. Cassidy Blackwood Consulting doubled in size within 6 months. The Vermont cabin became my sanctuary, weekends filled with silence and the steady lap of lake water. I hired more staff, expanded into new markets, built a mentorship program for women starting their own firms. At the launch event, standing beneath chandeliers in a hall filled with clients and protégés, I realized Blake had been a storm, loud and messy. But storms pass. What remains is the structure that stands. The dinner of closure. 1 year later, I hosted another dinner. Bigger this time. Rachel, Emma, neighbors, my mother, even Sarah flew in from Seattle. We filled the dining room with food and stories. Candles flickered against crystal. Laughter wove through every room. I stood, glass in hand, looking around my house, and felt the weight lift completely. This is what family looks like. This is what survival looks like. Rachel raised her glass. And this, she added, is what justice looks like. We drank, we ate. The night was ours. The final sight. Months later, in a convenience store off the highway, I saw him, Blake. Alone, hair unkempt, jacket frayed, clutching a 6-pack of the cheapest beer. He looked up and froze. Recognition flickered, then shame, then something hollow. I didn't say a word, neither did he. I paid for my things, walked past him, and stepped into the bright sunlight. Behind me, the automatic doors hissed shut. Epilogue. Blake had once stood in my office chair, pretending power, arranging my documents like trophies. He told me to sign or get out. I signed. I walked out. And in doing so, I kept everything. The house, the business, the legacy. He kept nothing but his lies. And in the silence that followed, I learned the sharpest revenge wasn't destruction. It was survival. It was success. It was walking past the wreckage without ever looking back.